Orc the bardic paladin, who sings and plays again. He tells the tales of glory and weaves a magic story. He'll join you at your table and ask you to share a fable. Heroes of humble origin, villains who must be fought again. No matter their skill or prowess, the people in life are countless. So we pray you heed our request. Enjoy this tale of sidekicks and side quests.
Episode 135, Steinway, Mabel, and the Balloon of Necromancy. Welcome to Sidekicks and Side Quests, the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that helps to put humans back into humanity and breathe life into your campaign NPCs with backstory and bravado. That's right, we're building a world, one character at a time. I am your host, Kurt Krenwelge, the Bardic Paladin, and I'll be joining Hannah Wright's table in the Levitating Platter.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests, the best unofficial Dungeons & Dragons podcast, in my humbly biased opinion. I've got an awesome guest for you this week, but before we get to my lucky contestant, I have to leave you in suspense with the first ad read.
This episode is brought to you by Plus One EXP and their brand new RPG Zine Club. Zine Club is a monthly membership subscription service featuring fresh zines from emerging and expanding creators across the globe. It's our way of inviting GMs, players, and zine lovers everywhere to invest more intentionally in the creative community. It's crowdsourced support without crowdfunding. So this service offers monthly releases that they put out in two 20 to 44 page saddle stitch zines. 3 different flavors. Take your pick from story zines, adventure zines, and all of the zines. You can pick your format of print and digital, or just get digital only for your favorite titles. Join the Clubhouse Discord section of the Plus One EXP community on Discord. Get the best prices guaranteed from your subscription that you're going to get each month. You get a private subscription portal where you can manage your subscription, add products, or change your information, change your frequency monthly, every other month, something else. You pick how often you want these new titles to arrive. You only get what you want. And if you miss a month, why, you can always go back and add a title to your recent month's order. Get an annual surprise each February after your first anniversary. Get access to special content with interviews, how to play videos, special content for Zine Club titles. Get a free pizza if you fill out one of the RPG Zine Club passports, or redeem it for a free pizza at events where Tony is present himself. You're going to get access to new and known designers, the best voices from across the RPG design community. And know that Plus One EXP and RPG Zine Club curate their zines based on community interest and feedback to help you discover your new favorite creators. There's a DIE focus because Plus One is committed to championing diversity, inclusion, and equity in their projects. Creators with diverse experiences make our community better. So Zine Club prioritizes creating equity for all of our creators. And it's more than a purchase. Your subscriptions will let us invest more heavily in our print partners and provide them with potentially life-changing support by consolidating scores or hundreds of purchases as the club grows. So, if you want to learn more, I would recommend that you go to the website rpgzine.club, again, rpgzine.club, and if you want, go to plus1exp.com, and when you're buying stuff on that site, beard balms or lip balms or beard RPGs or whatnot, and you need a discount code at checkout, be sure to use the code Randolph, RANDOLPH, at checkout and get some savings on your purchase at no extra cost to you. Again, website is plus1exp.com, and the Zine Club website is rpgzine.club.
All right. And without further ado, I turn the microphone over to my guest and ask, hello, Mr. Contestant, would you care to introduce yourself? Tell us who it is that you are and what is it that you do?
Wonderful. My name is Hannah Wright. By day, I am a teacher, but usually, if I'm on the internet, that's because I'm making podcasts. I am a director and sometime producer for Bloody FM, and I make an indie show that is a fantasy adventure show that is about what happens to adventurers between the adventures, taking place in a magical inn. It sounds, it's a little familiar, I would say, to, to,
Mm.
some, to this audience. Have I said the name yet? It's in between. INN in between. There we go. Okay,
In
good.
between. Yeah, no. So, trying to make a long story short, previous guest of this show, Andrew Strother, was once a guest on a similar type podcast called The Inn at the Edge of Greenwood,
Oh,
which
I
I
love
quite
that show.
enjoyed the perspective of an innkeeper, and the guests would come on and they would embody, these adventuring characters, and they would be trapped, pulled through the magics of the weirdness of the woods, and they would find themselves to be guests in this inn, and they would have this story and stuff like that back and forth with the guests. And that show, for whatever reason, I guess, decided to draw the curtains closed, but for the finale episode, to kind of help set an idea in the mind of the audience of like, oh, the innkeeper is actually, he's formally going to become an adventurer now. And the way that finale episode ended of his podcast was actually a crossover with your show, in which the aforementioned innkeeper finds himself in the goblin's head and speaks with Tessa, who is the proprietor or the caretaker of this magical inn. And then he gets introduced. Now that I've started listening to the In Between podcast from the very beginning, I'm not quite sure as far as that finale for the Inn at the Edge of Greenwood. Is he meeting the original group of adventurers or just some other group of adventurers, and then they go off and it's implied that, oh, he's going to go now journey with them and be an adventurer and stuff?
I try to take a very postmodern view as far as like extra canonical stuff. So it's whatever you want it to be, Kurt. Just believe whoever you like.
Okay, I see. It's the end of the Christopher Nolan movie with the spinning top. It's like, oh, did the top fall over or not?
It's less that and more like the part of the story that I wanted to tell, I told that. The rest is up to you. It is not my problem now, I guess. Not my problem. Not my privilege, I guess. If people want to fill that out with fan fiction, please do it. I am honored that In Between has a thriving archive of our own tag that I do not go on because I read the fanfic, but it makes me happy to check sometimes.
Yeah, and quite a healthy Patreon too, which I checked out, and I was like, "That's amazing that you have so much for your podcast, and it's so great." As you said, it's the downtime, it's all the in between stuff, and every episode has like a very clever name that kind of alludes to what's the tension, what's the problem, what's the thing that they're struggling with, between the action. So your podcast isn't necessarily devoted to dice rolling and combat and stuff like that. It's more role playing and like getting into the meat and bones of character study and stuff like that.
It's not even based on a real campaign. It is entirely scripted and not improv at all, except for a couple of lines that I'm mad that I did not write.
Well, awesome. Yeah. So, now that we know your credentials in the space, obviously, it goes without saying the next question should be a no brainer. But do you currently or have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons before?
Every week, Kurt. Every week. My dad actually runs a club, and I play in one game and run another for that club. He is the one who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons originally. Yeah, just imagine, teenage me and my siblings who were significantly younger than me all playing AD&D the best we can.
Wow, that's cool. Awesome. Like you got cred. You got street cred for sure.
Oh, I don't know about that. I would not play AD&D now. It's like not fun to me. Oh man, but I've played GURPS, I've played Fantasy Age, I've played Monster of the Week. I love them all. I don't love like a crunchier mechanic, but I like a story. I love telling a story.
And yeah, so Dad started you at AD&D, and you went on to go and explore and find all these other various tabletop role-playing games. And so do you find yourself more drawn to the more role-play heavy sorts of stories? I know you said not crunchy, but like you're not opposed to combat or anything like that?
I think it all depends on the group. I run one group that I run one group that is what is it? The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, I believe is the name of the module. And that group is the 2 of the 3 players are brand new. They're not necessarily familiar with the mechanics. But there is a way to play Witchlight where you don't have to do any combat at all. And as such, they've become much more into the role play of it, even though they do like the combat when it rolls around. But then I have, my group that I run for my dad's club is much more of I have one guy there who's also been playing since AD&D. And for his character arc, I was like, here is a dungeon. I crafted it just for you. And we just dungeoned for like 3 or 4 sessions. And I don't love dungeoning when I'm a player, but running a dungeon is very fun. And I didn't mind that at all, because even if we weren't role playing like at all, even if there were 3 encounters per session, it was fun because they were having fun.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this podcast, maybe, we might now, when we get to the random encounter section, we'll see if it feels very much like an episode of In Between. But on this podcast called Sidekicks and Side Quests, we like to focus on the other. We like to focus on the background actor, the best supporting, Oscars, if you will. So for you, do you happen to have a favorite NPC or sidekick character, whether they be from RPG, video game, movie, film, television, etc.? And why is this character your favorite NPC or favorite sidekick?
I have a favorite as a DM, and I have a favorite as a player. Which one would you like to hear about?
We can hear both of them.
Okay. As a DM, I threw in this encounter where my players were trying to take over the Thieves Guild. Long story. But I threw this encounter at them for this wizard who also wanted to take over the Thieves Guild, and he specializes in constructs, puppets, that kind of thing. They ended up not killing him for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't kill him. But, they caught him, and I'm like, oh, how do I roleplay this dude? What kind of a weirdo is a magician who focuses on puppets but also really wants to be head of the Thieves Guild? So I played him off like kind of a big nerd, and they decided, well, we're never going to kill Atlas. Atlas is our new pet NPC. So they let him go, but then they hunted him down at the apartment where he lives, bought his building. They're his landlords now. They break into his house all of the time. Every time they come up to him, it's like, Atlas, our best friend. And he's like, oh my God, it's not you guys again. And, and I don't know how this happened, but I love that they love him. Oh my gosh. Oh, Atlas. His life is so hard.
Okay, so that's your favorite as the DM, but what about as you as a player character?
Are you familiar at all with Titan's Grave?
Yes, I remember that show when it came out on Geek and Sundry Nerdist. Yeah, that was a good short little romp they did.
So much fun. So my friend
5 gold in a party. Yeah, classic. Yeah.
Classic. My friend bought the book and ended up trying to run it in Fantasy Age, and we ended up not liking Fantasy Age, so we switched it to Monster of the Week, and it's very fun. All of that said, we started that game. My character in that game is this like furious deaf teenage spell slinger who, like, the first NPC that she met basically was this like another nerd who was in the bar, and she like asked him to explain a tech thing, and he's like the Fantasy Age equivalent of a dragonborn. I don't know what that is, but he's like, of course I know how that works, how dare you? And she's like, no, can you tell me how it works? And he's like, explaining a tech thing to a pretty girl, I would die for you. So now he is my boyfriend. He's my lizard boyfriend, and I would die for him. He's the best boy in the whole world.
Okay. All right. That's pretty cool. His
name is Sleth, but no relation to the original Titan's Grave character.
Okay. It's been a while since I've watched it, so if I go back and watch it, if it's still on YouTube, hopefully.
Probably.
I know sometimes they remove old videos. I don't know why, but perhaps they'll, I don't know, maybe
I feel like I need to disambiguate from Hank Green a little bit. That this is my Sleth. It's not his Sleth. This is my boyfriend.
All right, excellent. Moving along with the next question, focusing on the side quest this time. What's been a favorite side quest or B plot element from you? Again, same sort of criteria: RPG, video game, movie, film, television, etc. And why is this side quest or your B plot element your favorite?
Nobody does side quests like audio drama. Audio drama is great at this because sometimes what an audio drama creator really wants is something that would have a following, but not a big enough following to like get funding from TV or movies or what have you. So audio drama people love to make stories about side quests, and my favorite side quests are from the shows Absolutely No Adventures and Side Questing. And oh my gosh. So both of them are about a hero who is given a great destiny and then absolutely rejects it and is just like, I'm going to run this bakery now, or I'm going to just help people find their pigs that they lost. And that's the whole show. And I adore it. It's just so comfy, and like there's something very affirming about these characters being like, I have decided who I want to be, and you don't get to tell me that. And settling into being a hero in the way that, like, on their own terms and in their own way. And I love them for that.
And hopefully no, necromantic evil overlord that's just like in the background making his master plan happen. And then it's going to come crashing in on this bakery being like, haha, you fool, you were the chosen one.
Sig has talked his way out of so many necromancer evil ones. You would not believe it. He hired one as his baker, so...
Oh, touche.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
then...
you can't beat Sig. He's the chosen one, and he wants to make croissants.
It seems kind of like the power set of Domino or like She-Hulk and Deadpool, as long like with ultimate luck and with like fourth wall breaking, it seems.
There is something to that for sure. And like the writers of Absolutely No Adventures and Side Questing, who are they are Destiny Howell and Telmania respectively. They are both very in the genre. They're both very genre aware. And there is like a bit of that goes into it, but most of the time they get out of adventuring and choose their own destiny by being clever and kind. And it's just really refreshing. It's very nice.
That's very cool. I dig that. And I'll have to hopefully go check that out.
Please do.
One of the various many other things, I'm still trying to get through all the in-betweens and all this. So
don't ask me about podcast recommendations. I have a spreadsheet.
Oh. And then for the final question here in the personal interview section of the show, what are you passionate about and why?
I think storytelling, and I think giving kids space to grow up and figure out their own stories.
Anything more to elaborate on that, or just like period, finis? That's it. That's the answer.
I feel like for storytelling, I definitely am the sort of person who is haunted by stories. Like I mostly write because if I don't, then it will just choke out my brain until it's the only thing I can think about. So I have to write things down in order to like function as a human being. And I'm lucky that I get to do that in a space where then I can, get some really cool, nice folks to record all that and make it real and exist, and other people also like it. Like that is such a privilege to work in audio drama. And it is also nice that in doing that, I get to connect with people and show them ways in which they can be okay being themselves too. I'm a middle school teacher, and it's so hard to be myself and be so confused and mad all the time. And giving kids the space to figure out their own story, giving kids the space to say, you can't talk that way about any of my students, even if that student is you. You can't please don't mistake feeling bad about something for actually doing something about it. These kind of like little encouragements that I can nudge them in the direction of like, you have agency over your own life. You have the choice to become who you want to be. If you don't like who you've become something else. You can change again. You can always change. That is something that I am passionate about, is like you get to decide who you are. And of course, circumstances make it so difficult sometimes. Like sometimes you have to be like at a dead end job because it's the only way to pay your bills. And that's totally understandable. But you also get to decide what kind of person you are at this dead end job, paying your bills. You have a little bit of control, even if you can't control everything.
Right. It's like with the classic, the Winter Warlock, of course, from the Rankin Bass Santa Claus is Coming to Town. You just put
Exactly.
one foot in front of the other. You said middle school teacher, and I have vivid memories of getting that song stuck in my head in like 7th grade math class. So like trying to do a math test and being like, put one foot in front of the other. And then just like kind of cheering myself up, like, yeah, we're figuring out like point A to point B and the locus and the you can clearly tell all my middle
You
school.
did great in middle school math, I'm sure.
Yeah, but no, that's cool. I mean, I was gonna ask what what grade level you taught, because I have a 3-year-old, so I was like, oh, that's
Oh,
very cool that you're dedicated to your students and stuff like that, and hopefully with all the chops and everything that you've brought to in between, you're able to bring that into the classroom. Maybe you're not like an English literary teacher, but maybe you find ways to gamify in your classroom, and it like engages the kids and lets them have fun, and like you said, that space to grow and be creative and find their voice.
that is always the goal. And I teach science and math, so about as far from English as you could possibly be. Um,
Mm,
but my hope is that like helping kids to understand the world, to think critically about it, like that is just as important to figuring out who they are and how they move about the world as English classes.
indeed. Well, I think we've covered all the ground there is to cover in the personal interview section, that now it's time to head into some NPC creation. And NPC creation is brought to you by you, the podcast audience, and our patrons from Patreon. So now is the time of the show where we give a shout out to our comfortable patrons and above with a loud hurrah. So to you, our queen of the Patreon, Goblin Katie, aka Katie Downey, as well as Anson Jablinski and good old mom and dad, we say cheers. We are a mighty but fierce crew here at the Levitating Platter. All of these folks get to introduce what is called an element of chance to our random tables that we have here for NPC creation. So they get to introduce a bit of chaos and fun into the random dice rolls that can be rolled on this part of the show. So if you want to learn more about our humble little Patreon community, you can go to my podcast website. You can go to the show notes below, or just go directly to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests. Learn about the accommodations we have awaiting for you, and help us to grow and expand our operations in this demiplane and worlds beyond. So, so we're here in NPC creation, well, we didn't discuss this beforehand, but the question becomes: are we going to randomly generate a character today, or do you have someone that you've brought and that we're going to discover who they are through the questions?
Oh, I random generation.
I know the real obvious one would be like, oh, Tessa's going to show up and we're going to, gamify Tessa and the Goblin's Head. But if you want to randomly generate an NPC, maybe hopefully question mark to be featured on a future episode of In Between, I'm cool with that too.
I think my favorite thing about thinking about characters is the implications. So let's see what the dice give us as far as implications.
Perfect. Okay, well, if you have your standard array of dice at the ready, virtual or otherwise, the first question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is the name of our character? And we determine that with the roll of a d20.
Okay. I have rolled a 4.
A 4. Your answer was provided by our previous guest, Katie DeMatteis, Mabel.
Mabel.
Mabel. Mabel.
I really, can we just real quick, Gravity Falls. Are we into Gravity Falls here? Because the resurgence of Gravity Falls has, I'm living for it. Anyway, sorry, side note.
Okay. Yeah, no, I loved watching Gravity Falls finally for the first time once Disney Plus came out, and I was like, I've heard of Gravity Falls, but I've never actually watched it, and like I got hooked. I was like, this is a very D&D-esque sort of a concept. Even them playing their version of D&D with Weird Al Yankovic voicing the evil wizard, and you had to roll the D. What was it, like a D700 or something like that? And
I believe It was the D29 or something stupid like that.
Right. It was like a weird number that you had to roll on it. That wasn't the maximum or the minimum, but that was like the super good number that you needed to roll in
Yeah.
order to make whatever you wanted happen. So
I'd play Dungeons, and more Dungeons. That's just me. I like math.
all right. So Mabel. All right. Excellent. So now the next question. What is the ancestry of our character? We determine this with the roll of a D100.
Ooh.
And if if your selection is something that you don't want, we're always free to re-roll on this show as many times as you want or need.
Sounds like a plan. What you got for a 38?
38 as I check the list. Okay. So it would be yet another Thri-kreen or a Crowl. Crowl, which is, I guess, the Ravnica version of a Thri-kreen. But we've had several Thri-kreens already appear on this podcast. So happy to include another one if you so wish.
Let's re-roll.
Sure, go for it.
42. So not that much different.
Okay. Well, interestingly enough, Mabel, you have again, I tried to go through every monster manual and every published book and find every iteration of something that would have the ability to communicate language. So for 42, it says zombie, ghoul, or skeleton, any kind. So
Okay,
if there is
that.
a zombie, a ghoul, or a skeleton that you would like Mabel to be, what kind?
All right, let's just say dead flavored for now. Did you know, Kurt, that I'm terrified of zombies? They give me such bad nightmares.
Oh, well, I love zombies in media and fiction. So
this is perfect. All right.
Yeah, okay.
We have a dead girl, Mabel.
So Mabel is some sort of in the realm of zombie, ghoul, skeleton. So somewhere in that neighborhood.
We can figure that out.
We can pin that down later. Okay. Well, now we need to figure out what's the job or role in society that Mabel, the undead, would have. This is just a regular D10 roll.
So exciting. How about a 5?
A 5. Haha. Okay. Well, your answer was suggested by one of our Patreon supporters, my dad, Wayne Krenwogi, a balloonist.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. If you're making balloon animals, you got to be a clown, right?
Well, I think balloonist in the sense of like hot air balloons. I believe.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense. Oh man,
in a fantasy medieval inside of a fantasy medieval sort of a fantasy land, if we're assuming that, unless you want to take it like the literal, balloon. I don't know. I'm sure we could Google it and figure out if balloonist is more for like hot air balloons or like actual like I just blow up the things for the kids and make like dogs and dragons and butterfly wings and stuff.
I find both intriguing, but let's go with the hot air balloonist.
Okay. All right, interesting. So Mabel operates some sort of hot air balloon service or something or another. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, the other thing we get to roll for the time being before we take a slight pause in the dice rolling, we need to figure out the age range of Mabel. So this is a D8 roll to give us some sort of rough idea on how old we should expect Mabel to be.
8.
So immortal. Well, it makes sense. She's undead, so she is immortal. So the immortal Mabel, who is a balloonist. So with these key details in mind, when you hear Mabel, who is zombie, ghoul, or skeleton, is a balloonist, like for a hot air balloon, and is immortal, what is the physical description that comes to mind? What are you picturing when you imagine Mabel?
Let's see. Being able to fly a hot air balloon is something that is like one of those lifelong hobbies. So she could have died at any age.
True.
But did she die? Okay, so the question I want to ask for her is, how did she die? Because if we know that, then we can like establish some things about her. So I don't think I want her to have died in a hot air balloon accident, because I think that I like the idea of her being dead and being like, well, I'm dead, I might as well learn how to fly a hot air balloon.
Okay.
So this is like a new hobby for her. Or
very important question, because typically we hear zombie, ghoul, skeleton.
Yeah, how folly a party is she?
Right, but my question that I was aiming for was like, what's her degree of independence? Was she like reanimated and then kind of left to her own devices, or because of the balloonist thing, and maybe the tangentially thinking of like what was what balloons have been used in combat because you're trying to look at the battlefield and survey how everything looks.
Hmm.
Is she a balloonist in some undead army or something like that? Like spying on the battlefield and figuring out where the holes in the defenses are, so that way the undead horde can come spilling through.
That there is something so whimsical about an undead balloonist in an army of the dead working for a necromancer. Is this an office sitcom? Are we making an office sitcom where she's Mabel the balloonist? This maybe is the best thing I've ever heard.
Oh man, yeah. Well, this definitely would back in at the end of March, when I participated in FateCon, one of the scenarios I ran was called Hallowed Be Thy Name, which was again my I guessed it on an episode of Dispel Magic where he talked about the Hallow spell, and the idea is if you could get enough high level clerics and stuff together, you could make like a ring, or like you could make like a defense network of all these hallowed grounds, and like undead wouldn't be able to get through. And so the scenario I came up was like, okay, this priest is here. He's trying to get the last section consecrated so that way the undead can't break through. So I'm imagining in the scenario, the balloon is up and Mabel's looking around and she's like, ah. And then she's like trying to tell her Lich overlord, like, look, there's the last section that isn't plugged. Like, we should send our troops over there.
This cleric didn't expect the balloon.
Exactly.
This is the greatest NPC we've ever created, I think. Listen, I've listened to some of this show, and I'm pretty sure mine is the best one. I'm sorry.
Wow, fighting words. Yeah, you'll have to take on some of our guests.
I'll fight all of them. I don't mind.
Well, now there's an idea for the Patreon is I should do like a bracket of like all the NPCs fighting each other, but make all the guests come back and like argue for like who would win in a fight. So there you go. There's an idea for the bank. Okay, so we're thinking of these things. So okay, if we run with this idea that she is a servitor within this undead army, is she more of a skeleton? Is she more of a zombie? Is she more of a ghoul? Because skeletons obviously just bones. Zombie, I know you said not your favorite, so there's the obvious popular images we have of zombies and in the monster manual and stuff. And ghouls are kind of gaunt, but they seem to be at least more intelligent, if not feral, is like the impression that I get.
Yeah, if you're a ghoul, you're eating people.
Right. Like you gotta munch on some fresh flesh. I mean, as a zombie you do too, but like, zombies are like, milling around mindless. Slowly. Yeah, mindless, maybe not necessarily intelligent.
I think that probably I like the idea of a talking skeleton. Because first of all, how's she doing that? But second of all, to operate a hot air balloon, you don't necessarily need like flesh. Right. It might actually be an advantage if you don't have flesh because you are dealing with fire and cold and the elements.
That's true.
That wouldn't make much of a difference in terms of weight, so the amount of fuel that you would need would be much less.
True. And I'm pretty sure it was on an episode of Kill Every Monster when they were talking about the low-level undead, and it was mainly zombies versus skeletons. The idea that I heard was like skeletons are more like mechanically trained, so like whatever tasks they could do in life, or they're just easily trainable. So maybe Mabel, once in her real existing life, was a balloonist. And so the necromancer raised her up and was like, great, you're going to operate my balloons for surveying the battlefields as I do my conquesting of the world. And so just very rote and mechanical, goes up in the balloon, and maybe like the alive minion of the Lich or whatever is actually there with the binoculars or the spyglass and is looking down, drawing notes and diagrams, and just Mabel's there just operating the balloon and is just a skeleton, not really minding much else. But maybe, like you said, maybe she was given a magic item or just retained the ability to speak in some way.
You've introduced two ideas that I really like. And the first one is that maybe this was Mabel's idea. Maybe she's like, well, my Lord Lich, I was a balloonist, at one point. And listen, I know it sounds a little crazy, but if we can't get through the barrier walking, what if we flew? This is great. I also like the idea of her having a bestie on the balloon with her. Like,
Oh, okay.
this
Do you
is,
want to roll
yeah.
for a bestie?
Ooh,
You
maybe
can
I
make
should
if
roll
you
for
want.
a bestie.
Yeah, we can go backwards and make a bestie.
Let's go.
Yeah. So let's see. What's another D20 roll for another name?
How's about 16?
16. From previous guest Nolan Page, Steinway. That's a pretty strong name.
That's very powerful.
Steinway, Steinway, which may bear a similar naming convention to a popular brand of piano. So, let's see. And then can you do another D100 roll for a random ancestry? Or do you just, in your eye, you hear Steinway, like, I know what Steinway is?
Ooh. I feel like I want Steinway to not be undead. I think I want him to be kind of an Igor character, so maybe like a human
Okay.
lackey of some kind.
Okay, so just you're assuming human lackey.
Yeah, that's what feels good to me. And your best friend's
Okay.
a skeleton named Mabel.
Sure. Okay. All right. So we have the idea. So Steinway is the lackey who basically, well, he's a servant also of this Lich character, but Steinway's in control of Mabel, or they're both seen as like co-equal. So it's like in the animated kids movie, it's like Steinway, go explore, find those gaps in the lines. Yes, my lord. And then like, come on, Mabel. And then she's like sassy and talking back, and there's a bit of banter.
Listening to, there's xylophone music as she's walking, and
yeah, like Corpse Bride. Yeah, kind of like Corpse Bride, Mabel, Corpse Bride.
I don't know, because the Corpse Bride movie was a good movie. I liked the movie, but then I found out that it's also like this pretty bad misinterpretation of a Jewish folktale. And like, I don't know if I want to mess with that. I think, and also because In Between is a show about friendship, and you can ship if you want to, but that we're not going to get into that. Like, yeah, feel free to rate the fanfic. I know it exists. I've been to the tag, but I'm focused on the friendship aspect, right? So I think I want Mabel and Steinway to be best friends.
Okay, they're best friends. Like Steinway's like, Mabel, you really get me. And then Mabel, like, does Mabel talk, or is Mabel all just like xylophone noises the whole time? And then like Steinway's able to understand and interpret. All
right, so the first thing I'm thinking about is ham boning, which would be very funny.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking about, I love playing with the mechanics of disability, like in the game with my beautiful lizard boyfriend. My player character is deaf, and that has like really interesting mechanical implications. So I think maybe she can't speak, but she speaks sign language.
Okay, so yeah, and I think with some of the last stuff they introduced with the errata or the Unearthed Arcana, they talked about like it's just assumed that like there's a common sign language, so it's very practical use. Like, hey, you're exploring in the dungeon, you don't want to make noise, just common sign to each other, be like, hey, two enemies down the hallway, you take the right one, I take the left one, kind of a thing. So it's a no-brainer. So that's cool. That. Okay, so so Mabel makes use of sign language. I also like to think comically, she just like kind of like boom, makes like xylophone and ham bone noises, and Steinway's just able to interpret it like, oh yeah, no problem. Like, boss, Mabel says, a league that way, my lord, and we'll find fresh grounds for corpses and stuff.
Oh my gosh, I love them.
So it's kind of like a wacky R2D2 C3PO sort of a thing.
Yes, definitely. It's a dynamic duo that I think is maybe question mark there for the kids in this fiction that we're building. Or, alternatively, like, if we want to get into the implications of, Mabel doesn't have a choice but to work for this Lich Lord. Why the heck is Steinway there? Like, what is in it for him? And this is interesting too, because there's nothing I like more than an evil character who is evil, like, with a purpose.
Right, yeah, like, if he's, like the Lich is his brother, if it's like the Lich was nice to him one day and he was just like, "You know what? Whatever you want to do, man, I'll follow you."
We could do what Disney does and make all of the bad guys like absolutely disaffected good guys who actually maybe have a point, but Captain America still has to beat them up for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes with kids stuff, it's just someone can be bad to be bad, like, because they
Yes.
do bad things. So, maybe Steinway is a bad guy. He could
I
just be bad and like I need to work for the bad guy because like that's what I do.
He's a real Doofenshmirtz in this like sword and sorcery sort of undead army.
And I did not watch Phineas and Ferb, but I know the meme of like, oh, if I had a nickel for every time something happened, I'd have two nickels. It's really weird, but I would have two nickels.
It's not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Yeah,
Right.
Doofenshmirtz is very deliberately an evil guy, but that doesn't mean he's like a bad person.
So kind of like so Steinway, if descriptive rather than prescriptive is lawful evil. He has like, the code or whatever that he follows, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like I'm out there like punching babies and stuff like that. It's like I just, the Lich wants to invade the kingdom. It's what we do. Like that's
Yeah,
the plan. That's the game that we're doing.
precisely. You see my vision.
Yes. Okay. All right. Very good. So now that we kind of and then the age range, the DA age range. We know Mabel's immortal because she's like the skeletal figure. But what
Mhm.
about Steinway? Are we talking like younger, older? I don't know. Let's roll a D8 and figure out.
Okay. All right. This is going to be fun. I rolled a 1.
Well, that would be child. Are you okay with Steinway being a child?
That's actually really good.
So a child who's deliberately chosen to be evil, but maybe doesn't fully understand how they're
No,
evil.
no, no. He signed up. He signed up to be evil. And the evil Lich Lord is like,
Signed
I
up.
guess I'm not above throwing a child into combat. Sure, why not? And this
Ah,
is
okay.
his best friend Mabel, who's a skeleton.
Okay, interesting. Okay, and so you were talking about like so the Lich isn't above using this child who of his free will question mark signed up to join this evil Lich army, but he has enough of a heart question mark to be like you could go with the balloonist. Like that'll keep you out of the way of any fire. Well, it'll keep you mostly out of the way. People would have to fly up there or be in a skyship or something like that to even or have really long range on their bows to be able to get to you. So you should be fine up in the balloon, kind of a thing.
Precisely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I actually really like the idea, and maybe this is just because this is my students, but I like the idea of him being a middle school aged kid, so like 12 or 13,
Ooh,
because I've
okay, so
never
just he's not quite a teenager. He's
no,
almost maybe tries to push it to be like, "Oh, I'm this teenager," but he's always
voice
reminded that, "No,
cracking
you're
and
just like you're just 12. Like, come on. You're not a teenager. Come on."
my favorite part about this is I've never met a middle schooler who didn't wonder if they were secretly evil, so this is perfect.
Mm. Okay, so we are treading familiar ground.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're like, "Do you think I'm a psychopath, Miss Wright?" And I'm like, "I don't think that. No, why would you?" No. Anyway,
Well, I signed up to join this Lich's army, and I got a sweet job being in the balloon with my new skeleton friend Mabel.
do
Yeah.
you think I'm a psychopath, Miss Wright? No, Steinway. I think you're misguided. Okay.
Dear mom and dad, I got the new job with the Lich. It's awesome. I get to be with the skeleton all day. Hugs and
This is.
kisses.
I think that Mabel has to be like the only adult, maybe, who realizes, like, oh my gosh, that's a whole kid. I guess he's mine now.
So the deep, latent maternal instincts kick in to be like, Steinway is my precious boy, and I will not let anything hurt him.
I don't know if it's even maternal so much as like, oh my gosh, someone dropped this lost puppy. I have to make sure he doesn't get injured.
Right, right. Precisely. Okay. So now that we kind of and then of course, before we can continue on, what sort of physical appearance do we have for Steinway, the 12-year-old, who willingly signed up to join this Lich army and is the buddy of Mabel the skeleton?
Okay, think of the most awkward child you can. Just real awkward. Like limbs don't know where they're going. Maybe like too long limbed for maybe how pudgy he is. That's Steinway. He's just awkward boy.
Ill-fitting clothes or
Oh
too
yeah,
big of
no.
clothes?
Listen, the Lich is gonna maybe put him slightly out of danger, but he's not gonna go back to school shopping for him.
Okay. So definitely dress the part of the henchman.
Oh,
Ill-fitting
absolutely.
clothes. Definitely looks the part. The edgy hot topic tween.
Just so awkward. Oozing awkwardness.
Painting black all over his face to like try and make his eyes like more sunken to imitate the Lich. He's like, yeah, we're
Trying to
doing
do
this,
his hair.
Mabel.
All he's doing it is making it greasier. Yeah, it's disgusting. Middle
Yep.
school.
And then Mabel's just like, bum, 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 dum, dum, dum. And it's like, yeah, I know. I'll work on it later. Yeah. And they're just having like this. They're just having this banter up in the balloon while they're like, observing the battlefield and stuff. Okay.
Perfect.
So with each of these characters, now that we have an idea of like who they are and what they look like, I think it helps to narrow down for the role playing aspect. What 3 adjectives would you use to describe Steinway and 3 adjectives to describe Mabel?
Okay. For Steinway, I think we want to do awkward's got to be in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I think also earnest, because there's nothing more embarrassing as a middle schooler than being earnest, like really, really caring about what you're doing. And should we say emo? Because that's pretty beautiful to say emo.
I'm trying to remember that song that was popular on MySpace back in the day. I must be emo. I walk around in tight pants, don't you know? I'm emo.
That's the one. Yeah, exactly. That's Steinway.
Yeah.
It's like, buddy, you can't pull off those pants. No one can.
Eyeliner that I stole to draw all on my face.
I shoplifted this. That's evil.
I stole this from the shop. Yes, I stole this from the shop. They were flabbergasted that a skeleton was with him, so they didn't stop him. They were too shocked to do anything. He's like, yeah, I got away with this.
What am I supposed to do with this?
And then for Mabel, what 3 adjectives would you use to describe Mabel?
I think tactical for sure. She's thinking through all of the implications. She's looking at the pros and cons of the placement of the enemy troops.
Mm-hmm.
Steinway's doing the reporting, but she's the one who comes up with the report.
Mm-hmm.
I think also begrudging, because she doesn't necessarily want to be this kid's new best friend.
Mm-hmm.
But also like, maternal is like not quite the energy I want to go for here. Because
big sister?
Big sister for sure. Like much more of a babysitter. But like I don't know, like an older cousin that you follow around,
Okay.
Because Steinway thinks that Mabel is the best. Steinway thinks that Mabel is the coolest thing ever. Look at me and my best friend.
He had never seen a skeleton up till this point. Joining the Lich's army, he's like, this is so cool. I'm around death stuff all the time. And look at this cool skeleton I'm with.
This is so emo. I love it. Yeah. So I think that like definitely she just kind of wants to do her job in Balloon. But now she has a babysitting job. But she is genuinely fond of the kid. I don't know how to encapsulate that in like 1 or 2 words.
Tactical, begrudging, and
we'll just go babysitter. It's not an adjective, but it is about right.
Yeah, I'm sure we could, go to thesaurus.com and find a good one. But yeah, okay, I dig. Now we get to go back to some dice rolling because we like all of our NPCs to have a valuable on them. So whether that's a valuable item, a piece of lore, a secret, or an ideal or concept. So because we got double the NPCs, you get to roll twice for the D4s for the category, and then twice for the D6s for the particular thing.
Let's go. All right. My D4s are 1 and 4.
Okay, so one of them is going to have an item, and then one of them is going to be subscribed to like an ideal or concept. So who would you like to have what?
I think that Mabel's got to have the item because she doesn't keep much of her own agency. So subscribing her to an ideal or concept doesn't seem like it tracks necessarily with what we built of her character.
Perfect. Okay, now we get to roll 2d6s and figure out what we get on each.
Okay. I have a 2 and a 5.
So which one would you like to go where?
Let's say 2 to Steinway, 5 to Mabel.
2 to Steinway, 5 to Mabel. Okay, so for Mabel, this totally is simpatico. It gels, it synergizes because it's a suggestion from Patreon supporter, my dad, Wayne Crenwogie. Again, here it is. An advanced balloon vehicle that has a built-in invisibility / cloaking device.
Oh,
So that's the balloon.
Does your dad like hey, excuse me, Wayne. Do you like balloons?
I don't, I never have asked him, but there, not to be too tangential, but there are fond memories. My dad is an Air Force veteran, and we were stationed in West Germany back when Germany was divided. And there are times or occasions, maybe once, but they did go on a hot air balloon ride in Germany. I was down on the ground, but yeah, they went on a balloon ride, just in the countryside of Germany and just enjoying the scenic, German rolling hills and trees and forests and all that. So maybe that's where it came in, where he got his inspiration for these suggestions that he added to the element of chance. So again, Patreon supporters, you should sign up, and at least the $4 level gets you to be able to do this. So
this could be
there you go.
I love that.
This could be you.
Here in I'm in northern Colorado, and I am lucky every day on my way to work. There's some avid balloonists out there, because they are out there every single morning, like just putting up balloons. I usually see them at launch, and it's just like the best, just driving by like, oh look, they have their friend, the squiggle one. The squiggle one isn't always here.
Yeah, and the only time that we get balloons here, at least in my area, is like if they specifically are like, oh, here's a festival of a thing, or just like a special event that we're doing for the town, and we just happen to have all the, the balloons maybe on the ground, but they fill them up with the hot air, and so you can see like you see them all light up and stuff.
I love a balloon festival. Talk about your childlike wonder. My gosh.
And then for our friend Steinway, of course, he has to subscribe to an ideal or concept, and his ideal was suggested by previous guest, the spouse of Katie DeMatteis, Ben Martin Mooney, astrology. So Steinway is really into astrology.
I love that for him. This emo teen. You know what? That is, oh my gosh, that tracks so hard. Like, you're gonna latch onto something when you're an emo teenager. Astrology works so well.
Is his astrology is what led him? Now, astrology is different than astronomy. So he's not so much studying like, oh, these are the constellations and like all this stuff. Astrology is more like, oh, I see signs and personalities and stuff based on the constellations and positions of the planets and all this stuff.
Precisely.
Which, horoscopes and all that stuff, right? That's what we're talking about, astrology.
I'm gonna be mean to some listeners, I'm sure, but a lot of math involved to accomplish absolutely nothing. I don't ascribe to astrology myself, but I love the idea that he does. You know what? I think that the reason that he thinks he's evil has to be because, like, the alignment of his stars, like his sun sign and moon sign, and what's the other one? I don't know, Mars sign? I don't remember. I don't ascribe to astrology.
Something's rising, something's falling.
Exactly. But like his 3 signs are set up in such a way that it's like he's like the doomed child or the doomed man, or like he's the evil man. So he's like, he got it in his head that means that he has to go and be evil.
So he found the baddest dude that he could, signed up for the Lich's army. And is he practicing, like, because he's high enough in the balloon, he can see the stars, and he's constantly like doing readings for Mabel. And of course she doesn't, she's a skeleton. She can care less. And
her
she
life
doesn't
has not changed for hundreds of years. She's been ballooning and breaking hearts for all the time. And here comes this kid who's like, you're going to meet a tall, dark stranger, probably.
Okay. And I was going to say this tween has never heard the Weird Al song "That's Your Horoscope" for today, which is a hilarious song.
That's a shame because it's a good song.
It's a great song. It's a very ska influenced song. So probably helped me to contribute to my love of the genre of ska music. Okay, all right. So now we kind of know, what drives them as characters. So getting to learn more about them. But of course, all of our NPCs have to be able to offer side quests to adventurer characters, to player characters. So what is going to be the quest that Mabel and Steinway are going to need help with, that they're going to petition a bunch of player characters, a bunch of adventurers to go and do on their behalf? So is it a matter of both of them are offering separate side quests, or together they need the players to do something? And if you want to randomly generate that, the last dice to roll is a d12. Or if you're inspired, you can kind of think of it now. Or maybe, roll it and then use it as a springboard or something.
I think I have like the method by which this quest might be offered, but I don't know about the quest itself. So I'll roll that d12.
Sure.
I have a 4.
A 4. Again, this I'm just going to go ahead and tell you to re-roll, because this answer from Nolan Page has come up a couple different times, and I don't think that Mabel and Steinway need the player characters to deliver a breeding pair of a rare species of an animal to a reserve to help them to repopulate their numbers. That doesn't seem like it jives with them.
They're not very eco-friendly, these balloonists. Yeah. All right, let me see. Come on, dice roller. What are you doing? 9.
Okay, let's try this one. This answer was suggested by previous guest Glyza Champion. Kill a very big monster, but the monster is chill and isn't violent or doing anything bad. Does that sound like something Mabel and Steinway would need help with?
Absolutely. I think that this monster is in their way. Maybe the monster has some kind of I don't know, you harvest fuel off of the monster, but it has to be dead first. And Steinway is 12, and Mabel has a CR of 1/4. So they're not going to beat this monster by themselves. So they have to recruit the adventuring party in order to get fuel for the balloon, because otherwise they're stranded.
Right. And their Lich Overlord has specific demands.
Yeah, they got to get back to the Lich Overlord. It's just unprofessional.
Okay, very cool. It might be a very interesting way. This side quest would be like a way to introduce the big bad evil guy, just showing who's in his army. It's like you've got Steinway and Mabel. They're like this odd couple. It's like, hey, we need you to kill this. Well, I'm just trying to think what's kill a very big monster. Well, we need you to kill this thing because it has this component that we need to be able to make Mabel's hot air balloon run. And if we don't get it, we don't get back to our boss in time, he's going to be real mad.
I also feel like it's really important that the way that this quest is presented is with Steinway threatening to kill the adventurers and Mabel being like, he's not going to kill you, but can you help us anyway? He's like he's 12 and he's got a penknife and he's like, I will get you.
Right. And then Mabel's there ham-boning xylophones.
Yeah, she's signing, please ignore the child. He's kind of dumb. Can you help us kill this thing?
Do you have any idea of what this very big monster is, or do you leave it up to a dungeon master to figure out what that monster is?
Well, before I was a teacher, I was a chemist. And I am thinking about how hot air balloons tend to run on, I want to say it is a gas, right? It's like butane or pentane or something.
Because all the hot air has to go into the balloon itself to help it to rise. And then, you have the weights, you take the weights off, and then the balloon lifts up into the air.
Right, yeah, you have a torch inside that literally blasts fire into the air, and then a parachute, which is a little hole at the top that you open with the pull of a rope.
Sounds like you've been in a hot air balloon before.
No, I just know about them because of a book, ironically, that I read in middle school.
It's all connected. It's all one big circle.
Full circle. Let's see. I mean, if it's something gaseous, then that's difficult to capture. So it's probably got to be some kind of a liquid fuel, which makes me think it's like a black jelly or something like that.
Like a black pudding ooze, you mean?
Yes. Black pudding is what I was talking about. Yes.
Ooh, okay. So Mabel's valuable is this advanced balloon vehicle that has a built-in invisibility and cloaking device. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I got an image of the Wonder Woman invisible jet, that they're just kind of sitting in there in the invisible balloon. Yeah, it's the outline. And then Mabel turns it off and it's like, okay, here's my balloon device. It's barely the balloon is barely inflated at this point, but they're parked somewhere, like in a field or off, in the woods or something like that. And
Mhm.
then somewhere nearby is a cave entrance, and they suspect, like, oh, there's a black pudding in there. Or they did
Mhm.
some recon trying to look for something as a fuel source. And they're like, black pudding, but you're a tween and I'm a skeleton. There's no way we're going to be able to take that thing on. So they need the heroes to go in there.
CR3? Heck no.
So kill the black pudding, bring back what remains you can of it, because obviously it's an ooze and it's going to be hard to collect that.
Mhm.
Maybe conveniently inside this advanced balloon device, there are crystal or glass vials or jugs or something like that, that they're fuel canisters, fuel jerry cans, if you will, magical jerry cans that you can use to like slurp up all the black ooze to be able to pour into the burner or whatever.
Exactly. And Steinway is like, or else we'll kill you. And Mabel is like, we will give you 100 gold.
Okay, so that's what you're thinking the reward for the party is going to be, is 100 gold?
Something like that. I'm terrible at scaling magical payments. Not a chance can I, like, I always end up giving my players more money than they need, and then they're like, what's the point? I can just buy all the magical items I want. And then I'm like, weird. Conveniently, this giant city doesn't have that magical item.
Guess you'll have to go explore another tomb and find a magic item that's collecting dust, or
Yeah,
not collecting
precisely.
dust because it's magic. Yeah,
Forgot the magic items don't collect dust.
right. They
Oh,
don't collect dust. They don't rust. They're just like
someone get me
weird. It's
some.
like all this rusted, crappy stuff, and then like the one cool, good-looking thing in here.
And then strangely, a perfect bow. Yeah, but all of that to say, yeah, it's like some kind of monetary reward. Like, I don't know. Maybe Mabel does all right for herself. Maybe the Lich, maybe she's union. The Lich has to pay her like a little stipend, even if she doesn't use it. And she's been working for him for so long.
Interesting. Yeah,
I
very
love the
interesting take on the
idea
Lich.
of a goon union. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Sorry, I was trying to think of like, like a union, and like, well, it does cost money or at least spell components to be able to raise the dead. So
Mhm.
unless it's, from their adventures on the ground, like,
That
because
could
Mabel
be.
is a skeleton and coming across commoners who can't really defend themselves against skeletons, maybe that is accumulated wealth over time that she's taken or whatever.
Yeah, she just has little box.
Okay. So she's willing to offer up her whatever gold amount that she has
Mhm.
as reward for helping. And Steinway is just trying to be an edgy tween and says like, fine, I won't kill you. Has nothing else to contribute, you don't think?
I think that like as soon as he gets on, like, Mabel's gonna have to convince him that's like, no, if we pay them, then that means they're serving the evil lord too. And then he's like, oh, okay, that's fine then.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I read this in the stars. That's good. Like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no. Oh yeah, this is the auspicious meeting I read about in the stars. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, hon. He's like, we're this little
Okay.
astrolabe and this little diet his star charts. That's so cute. Oh my gosh.
And then the flip side of the equation, what's going to be the consequence of failure or refusing the call to the adventure? So the party stumbles across this advanced balloon, and they decide not to take them up on the, hey, go kill this black pudding, scoop its remains up into these magic jerry cans so that way we have fuel to be able to get back to base. What if the players turn hostile against the poor tween and the skeleton and decide to fight them? Obviously, it would be a steamroll unless they're a
Oh
low
yeah.
level party. And maybe the advanced balloon has defensive capabilities or not. I don't know. However, Dungeon Master, you conceptualize this advanced balloon device vehicle. But yeah, what's going to be the consequence of failure or refusing the call to the adventure or getting hostile or whatever?
It really depends on the party here, because if your party is murder hobo inclined, then they could just kill Steinway and Mabel. And if they do that, then I would definitely give the balloon defensive capabilities so that they can basically they have to destroy the balloon so that they like feel a sense of accomplishment in defeating this tool of the Lich Lord or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
while still like I don't know, getting their kicks, killing a 13-year-old child.
What about if their aim is to capture? Because in my head, I would think, oh, a low-level party comes across an advanced balloon device that'll help us traverse the world and not have to roll random encounter rolls and stuff like that, traveling through the woods. Yeah, we're stealing this balloon and we're going to go on joy rides and adventures together in it.
Oh, I have absolutely done that before. I accidentally gave a party a flamethrower once because it didn't occur to me that by giving the enemy a flamethrower and then they kill the enemy, they're going to pick up it just did not, I don't play enough video games. Um, so, I can see that being a hazard. And I will say that if we want to go Doofenshmirtz with it, it absolutely has a self-destruct button.
Okay, so there is the ability of Mabel or Steinway being able to self-destruct this device, but if again, the failure of this quest presented, so if they're clever, they're successful, they somehow manage to get past all the countermeasures and they don't trigger the self-destruct device, then the party has this advanced balloon device, but it's low on fuel. So they're still going to have to figure out how to fly this thing and work the device. So that's still a problem in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And then maybe it has a panic device or some sort of alarm spell that like, oh, someone other than these two people are aboard the ship now. Now the Lich knows.
Yeah, you've gotten the attention of the Lich King. I've written a new encounter table and all of these guys have wings. Like, yeah. I could also see a failure state of them killing Mabel and taking Steinway, and in that case, the consequences would be having to deal with a 12-year-old emo, which is not for the faint of heart.
Right. Same sort of thing, because I'm sure that the Lich is like doing sendings to Steinway, being like, so now Steinway becomes like a plant inside the party. So he's like, I want you to follow these people, be their loyal, simpering, sniveling follower, do their every bidding, but really you're going to report on them to me whenever I do a sending to you. Don't talk out loud, talk in your mind, and then you just tell me what they're doing. And so then Steinway becomes the ultimate betrayal. Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal, you tween.
Precisely. I could also see like a win state where they recruit Mabel and Steinway, and those are just like your followers now. That would also be fun from a mechanical point of view because, again, it's a 12-year-old and a CR 1/4 skeleton, and you have to protect them now.
Right, because they're the only ones who know how this balloon actually works.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can leave them at the balloon, but there will be encounters where they're in the balloon with you. And if Steinway falls out the balloon, what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah. Like, oh, shoot. Like,
oh, my beloved NPC.
Dive.
No. Featherfall, quick.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, featherfall, or you tie a rope off and you dive over the edge. Very like action heroes swing under the balloon, come up the other side, and drop them back on deck and stuff.
Which would be very cool for the players. There's a lot of good options.
Very cinematic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so then it is possible, quote, in failure that you could succeed because now you've gained two hirelings, two follower characters. But then, it still might be the same thing where it'd be very interesting because, as far as like scrying and stuff like that, because maybe Mabel can't or doesn't disclose whenever she's being scryed on. And so the Lich is able to know like exactly what's going on the whole time. So maybe the Lich plays it cool, like, okay, I don't know who these jokers are that stole this advanced balloon from me, but let me figure out what their deal is. And then when they least expect it, okay, now I'm going to send like a battalion of my, a battalion of my low level undead. And if they keep, fighting against them, I'm going to send more and more impressive things until I finally send a Death Knight after them. And if the Death Knight can't stop them, then I'm just going to have to come take care of it myself.
Yes, exactly. It would be a really cool build for this big bad evil guy. It could also be a really good way for the more story focused kind of party to like have a really good redemption arc with this like kid who is threatening to kill them in their sleep. And a literal skeleton who's just like, I literally just work here. Like having them, I don't know. I've had parties who would love that as a redemption arc, who would love that as like extra side quest task. Make this 12-year-old not so feral. It'd be
Mhm.
perfect. I think I've said that he's both 12 and 13, and I've decided he's both and he doesn't know which.
Right, of course. That time period, maybe he's not, he can read the stars supposedly, but has never read a calendar before in his life. So he can't exactly tell you when his
He doesn't know what
birthday
day it
is.
is.
Calendars are for narcs.
I also like the idea of him just doing astrology really, really wrong for a long time. Especially if you end up with something like a Circle of the Stars druid or something, and they're like, that's literally not how any of this works. Steinway, please.
You've been reading it both upside down and backwards. I don't know how you've done it, but you've been reading this all wrong. So it's like, I was supposed to be a good chosen one? And then he has like the existential crisis sitting there being like, I've been bad this whole time, but I'm really supposed to be good. Yeah.
There's nothing better than that. Oh my gosh, this is perfect.
All right.
I'm pretty sure. Listen. In this bracket, my NPCs would not win a fight, but they would win your heart.
Hearts. Yes. Okay. And then do you think there are any other optional questions to explore for this dynamic duo, or do you feel like Steinway and Mabel are set?
I think for the right party, exploring Mabel's backstory might be interesting. Like, who were you when you were alive? Especially if, while she was alive, you could draw some interesting parallels between like one of the player characters in her past life, or and like maybe they were very similar up until Mabel chose one path and the player character chose this other path, and like, I don't know, that could be really existentially satisfying. I think, finding Steinway a place where he is loved and fulfilled, like especially if he joined up to the Lich as an orphan or something like that, like finding him a home or making a home for him could be like a really beautiful story. I like the idea also of him absolutely having loving parents who miss him, and like having to track them down and being like, here's your son, we fixed him for you, don't worry. He doesn't do astrology anymore, and he doesn't think he's evil. Have fun. You're welcome.
Yeah, very loving parents, and he's like one of many siblings, and just like it was an honest mistake. Like he said he was gonna go out and go apprentice for a trade. That's what he told us, and he said he was heading to the big city. They're just simple farmers, and they're just like, and he sends back money and letters and stuff like that, but he lies through his teeth in the letters. And then they don't realize that he's been serving this, this great undead, his mom, chiding him, being like, the zombies were in the rutabagas, and you told me that you were learning to be a blacksmith like an honest kid, and beans him with a frying pan or something like that. Yeah.
Whack with a wooden spoon. Boy, why is there undead in my garden again? Oh my gosh.
They're Mabel's friends.
Mabel was hosting a tea party.
And then there's a cute little tea party scene going on in the garden. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I also like the idea of him coming back with all these necromancy skills and the best friend Mabel, but him being like a happy, well-adjusted kid now. And and now he's just like, oh, Mom, do you want me to bring up some skeletons to help you plow? And she's like, I mean, I wish you wouldn't, but yeah, sure, okay. I don't want to do it.
So the prized bull that died 3 years ago, he resurrects the bull, so now he can be put on the oxen plow and just like
exactly,
till the fields and stuff. Like yeah. Reduce, reuse, recycle. That's the motto of our farmstead.
Our farm is about sustainability.
We use every part of the cow, and I mean every part.
Including after the cow is gone.
He fed us in the winter, and now his bones work to plow the fields to get it ready for spring. Yeah.
He's been pulling out tree stumps. We're going to plow a whole new field because of him. You want me to just let him die? Are you kidding?
Very cool. Yeah. So it sounds like we got a pretty awesome dynamic pair of characters that I think it's time we throw them into a random encounter.
This random encounter is brought to you by my sponsor, Zencastr. Zencastr came into my life when I didn't think I would need it, but now I definitely need it with trying to raise a family and keep the podcast episodes flowing and all that stuff, and not trying to keep myself awake for all hours of the night trying to get these episodes edited. Thanks to Dane and Benjamin over at Dispel Magic showing me this service. I was hooked, and I decided to become a paying member so I could get access to all these awesome tools with editing and getting these great episodes to you. So it is so easy and super easy now to record a podcast with Zencastr. You log into your browser and you start recording a high quality podcast right away. You could record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen. Knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. A hard sell. On that point alone, I've been podcasting for a couple of years now. That is amazing. So that is a great selling point of this service. You can sound your best. Have you ever worried what you might sound like on a podcast? With Zencastr's post-production process, it makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes the ums and ahs as you click on that feature in the post-production settings, and in your recordings, it's going to remove those awkward pauses and conversations too with the click of a button. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. It really is that easy. It's all in one. If you have thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are done. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and all other major podcast destinations. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code SIDEKQPodcast, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Again, the website, zencastr.com/pricing. Use the code SIDEKQPodcast and get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. Thank you so much to the sponsor, and back to the podcast.
All right, so we are here now in the random encounter section of the show. This is where we do our roleplay vignette scenes of the NPCs that have been created today. So you having a pair of characters, feel free to adopt a voice or just say like Mabel just says this or Steinway does that. But I think you will do a fantastic job of handling these NPCs. But the question becomes, who am I going to be in this scene that we're going to present these characters in? Am I an adventurer character who stumbles upon this pair as their balloon is low on fuel and they need to get back to base? Is it me being this Lich overlord? Is it a scene in the past with Steinway and his parents on the farm? Or is it something far in the future and we're like we were kind of riffing on the hypothetical that Steinway and Mabel were reformed and they went back to Steinway's farm. I don't know. Whatever you're thinking would be a good scene today.
I do like the idea of playing out meeting an adventurer.
Okay. So as you said that you've listened to a couple of episodes of this podcast, do you know which adventurer character you'd like Steinway and Mabel to meet? Or do I need to go through the Rolodex of characters?
I think that you should choose one. I've listened to some of the show, not enough of it, I would say.
I see. Okay. Well, that's fine. I can list them all. And people are usually impressed that I can do this with no notes. Not humble brag there, but let's see. So we've got Duncan, who is the happy-go-lucky adventurer for hire. No task too small, no feat too daring. We've got Sonia, the warrior woman, who started as a barbarian and then multi-classed into a paladin who serves to redeem the undead. We have Korak, who's the lawful evil arcane trickster roguish dwarf. We have Chrisley, who's the herbalist botanist wood elf druid, who then multi-classed into a cleric who serves living memory. We have Orion, who is the astral elf illusionist wizard, who's kind of like a Spock sort of a guy. We have Agape, who is the lilac-colored tiefling Sorlock, so started as a Feywild magic sorcerer, and then made a pact with one of the other NPCs made on this podcast to get an Archfey Warlock pact. And then the newest NPC that we've created is Lifespell the Necromancer. He's a forest gnome, old man, and he has his faithful manservant Octavius. Could be very interesting to have a budding romance between Mabel and Octavius, who knows? But really, it's you to choose who you'd like them to encounter.
All right, I'm interested in Sonia because I want to know what it looks like to try and redeem the undead. Sonia comes across Something in the trees that is hard to make sense of. It is tarp-like in that it is draped over the branches of the trees, but it is also smoking a little and strangely distended. It looks as though it is a particular shape, and that shape is not typical of a tarp. Underneath this huge shape that is trapped in these tree branches hangs a basket that is hanging on by one of the three ropes it looks like it was previously hanging on by. And just underneath this basket, looking like they may have fallen from this basket, is a skeleton and the most awkward 12-year-old boy she's ever seen.
Yes, and as we recall, where we last left Sonia, she was with Axios, the Revenant Priest, and they were in the major city, and that's where they encountered Kira, who worked in this manor, and revealed herself to be this Death Knight. And they had to go on this whole quest to find this ring that was being in the possession of a gambler. And so through that whole adventure, because I'm the DM of this podcast meta narrative, we'll say that she was successful in getting helping to get Kira out from her death knightness, and she's redeemed. And so Axios was very congratulatory to Sonia, and he said he was going to remain in the town and help deal with any other undead redemptions that needed to happen. He trusted Sonia to be able to go back on the road. He actually kind of pointed her. He's like, I feel like there's something that's going to be going on outside of town. Just, give it a couple days. You'll know it when you see it. And so Sonia is walking into this scene already having that sort of sense of like, there's something here that I need to stop and see. And so she approaches the scene and she sees the skeleton and she sees the tween, and you're surprised because, she looks like a barbarian paladin mix, where she's got like hide, but also like plate and stuff like that across, and these religious symbols that depict the god who wishes to redeem the undead on her person. And she's not hostile. She does not draw her blade. She kind of comes up on the scene and she's just kind of like, well, it seems like you two took a tumble there. You mind telling me what's going on here?
The boy speaks and says, "Hey, back off. What are you supposed to be anyway? Some kind of like circus guy?"
And she definitely narrows her gaze and growls. And she's like, little boy, you will refer to me as a lady in my presence.
Oh, first of all, I'm not little, okay? I'm like 13 or something. Second of all, we need fuel for this balloon and you're gonna help us get it. At this point, does Sonia speak sign language?
Yeah, it's assumed that all my adventurer characters know common sign.
Okay, so if I can do some Foley for you real quick, but I don't know if you can hear that at all.
Sure, go for it.
All right. The skeleton starts to sign and says, please don't take him too seriously. He's very young. If you could help us, we would appreciate it.
And Sonia looks impressed seeing the skeleton communicate. And so, she actually regards Mabel with actually a great deal of respect, more than probably either Mabel or Steinway would expect. And she's just kind of, she's interested. So she's like, I have not encountered a skeleton like you before. Forgive me. She'll bow and she'll say, my name is Sonia, and I serve he who wishes to redeem those in the slavery of undeath. And if you would like my service in this simple matter, I'm happy to help. But if you want greater freedom, that I can help deliver.
Steinway immediately says, freedom from what? We don't need anything. What are you talking about? Mabel, meanwhile, is signing, you promise a lot. My name is Mabel. This is Steinway. We just need fuel for the balloon.
And Sonia will roll an insight check, and based on, there's only so much you can read into sign, but maybe the posture of the skeleton, but we'll say she does really well. Yeah, there's body language. She does really well on her insight check. And, what's the vibe that Mabel's trying to put across as like Sonia's given her a real good read over to gain her sense of motive and stuff?
I think that she can tell absolutely that Mabel's focus is on Steinway, on keeping the kids safe. The fuel for the balloon is something they need, but mostly she just wants to make sure that like If there is like a defensive posture about Mabel, it is in putting herself between Sonia and Steinway.
Sonia notices this in regards, and so she'll turn to Steinway and say, "Your name was Steinway, is that correct? That's what Mabel told me."
Yeah. What? Yeah. Stop talking about me behind my back.
And Sonia smiles and says, "What brings you here to be with Mabel?"
We have work to do. It's not really any of your concern, but we have our Lord's bidding to do, so whatever.
She'll ask for the name of the Lord, the Dark Lord that you serve. Does Steinway or Mabel volunteer that information?
Steinway doesn't, Mabel absolutely does.
And I think she'll roll a history check, and she'll be like, she understands who these two work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, would it be a surprise then to Mabel that like this 13-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, is working for a Lich?
Yeah, she would certainly. Sonia would definitely be concerned, of one so young and working willingly with this, on paper very bad guy, and so she's like, "I've not been with my order long. And I am directly under the tutelage of Axios. I don't have the same
Ew!
abilities."
I think he knows the name Axios. It reacts immediately. Ew!
Okay.
Boo! Boo! Ew! Gross.
She resists the barbarian urge to just pull her sword out and strike him down. She swallows that, and she continues. Maybe she has to like kind of like crack her neck a little bit, a loud bone pop, doing that. And she's like, "My friend, my mentor, Axios, has done many wondrous things in my presence, and he's a great teacher. And he's taught me a lot about second chances and redemption, and not necessarily taking things quite at face value and seeing, the truth that's really there behind the reasons why you're doing things." Like, and she looks at Mabel and she's like, "And I can see that you care for him and you want him safe and protected." And then she'll look at Steinway, and I guess probably, she'll be like, "I can see someone who's searching for purpose and is desperately reaching for anything for meaning, but you're still just young, and you need to live your life, and you need to have experience in order to grow and find your true way and your purpose. And if me helping you to get fuel for your balloon will help you do that and begin your journey of redemption, are you willing to take my help?"
He's like, I'll take whatever fuel you can get us. I don't know what you're talking about with purpose. I have a purpose. I serve my Dark Lord. Obviously.
And what does Mabel say?
Mabel just shakes her head.
"So you have no objections to me helping you in this endeavor?"
Nah, dude, you look like the kind of person who can beat up black pudding.
"Oh, a black pudding, huh?"
Yeah, just don't let it, corrode your armor or whatever, if you call that armor.
She flexes hard. As an intimidation check, how high do you think Sonia gets in an intimidation check against this tween?
I mean, it's gotta be like when you're that young, you don't feel fear in the same way, because that's just not something that your frontal cortex has learned to do yet. So I don't think that it phases him too much. But I think that like in his hindbrain he'll be like, oh, like some kind of lizard brain response will, oh, she gonna eat me, and like step back, like just a little.
Okay. And then she holds a hand up to Mabel, like, "I'm not actually going to hurt him, but I just need to I need to put this pup in his place. He's being a little mouthy. I'm resisting every urge to kill him and my old ways. I'm trying to be this paladin, trying to fulfill this oath and redeem the undead."
Mabel signs he means well.
I know you care for him, and I appreciate that, and I understand that, and I sense it. I'm working on talking to him and understanding how he goes about his mission of redemption. I can see that for you. She's like talking to Mabel directly, being like, trying to proselytize, trying to encourage her and be like, "If you don't want to be a skeleton and be undead and be trapped in this life, I can help you basically cross over, find peace eternally in a
Hmm.
non-threatening way, like in a good way, like willingly allowing yourself to be released.
I think, if I may, I would ask for like another insight check. Like, how do you think that do you think that Sonia is clocking how this kind of new proselytizing attitude is received?
I mean, she's been under the tutelage of Axios directly for a while, especially off this last adventure. The two of them were working closely hand in hand. So, like, she's coming off of a high of like, she's been doing really well. She's been, again, it's like, I've been hanging with the master, with the teacher. He trusts me. Like, I'm going out there and I'm doing the work like he does. So ultimately, her goal is to like be able to like find undead to like report back to Axios to be like, hey, I found someone who's receptive. Please come here. So that way you can actually do the power to like redeem the undead, or to lead, Mabel in this case to like bring her with her to go and find Axios. So that way this redemption can happen.
In that case, I think that Mabel will sign "Don't make promises you can't keep."
And she'll smirk and nod her head and be like, all right, fair enough. We'll see. We'll see how I can keep my promise. So she like now she does the whole thing of like taking out her huge like broadsword off her back, examining it, like checking out her magic bracers and all these other things. And she'll check her gear, make sure it's good. She hasn't used it in a little while. It's been a couple days, months in podcast time, but she stows her gear. She checks it to make sure it looks good. And so she turns to the pair and she's like, all right, lead the way. So she's going to take this very seriously. They need fuel. So she's going to be their help. And so she's like, all right, lead the way to the fuel.
Okay. I think that what they're gonna lead her to like a nearby cave. And I think what she is subject to as they walk is like just a mini lecture by Steinway, who thinks he knows exactly how a balloon works and knows like some stuff, but isn't exactly like communicating it very well yet because he hasn't like sorted it into a logical pattern. So it's just like an inundation of information about why they need the black pudding and how it's going to burn, and like it doesn't burn very clean, but it'll work just fine, and like they'll have to like clean out the balloon later, but whatever, it's fine. And they'll have enough fuel to get back to the master, and like they have some scouting to do, and this is what the parachute is, and this is what the torch is. It's just like a constant stream.
Yeah, no, I think Sonia will be polite up to a point, but she will, like try and entertain more of a side conversation with Mabel. So whatever they decide to discuss as they make their way to this cave, to the Black Pudding, and what closes out the scene? How does the scene close out?
I think that Mabel's gonna be asking questions about this god because chances are good she's never heard of this god. Like it's kind of one of those, I'm not gonna tell my enslaved army of the undead about this god who could possibly save them, which is a real life tactic of enslavers in the real world. Anyway, pretty messed up, right? So I think that she'll probably ask some tactful questions. So it's mostly up to like where Sonia wants to lead that conversation.
And scene. So we did it. We made it through the random encounter. So how was it getting to play Steinway and Mabel?
I love them. I'm gonna put them in every game.
Hey, we did our job on this podcast. We're changing D&D games left and right. All dozen of them, right?
All dozen.
There are dozens of us. Dozens. But yeah, so what did you think of your experience on the podcast? Mabel and Steinway didn't exist an hour and a half before this conversation started, and now they're fully fledged NPCs that are ready to go into any D&D game.
I have a friend, this is going to sound like a tangent, but it's not. I have a friend who's my philosophy major friend, because everyone has one of those. And they're the first person who told me about like the source of the term platonic, like meaning love that is true and real but not romantic. And the way that they paraphrased this like idea of Plato's was, what's better than sex is writing a book together. And I feel like that's the beauty of D&D in general, is getting to tell a story together, like getting to craft the shape of a narrative together, which is why people are so mad when one person takes over the whole narrative arc of a story, or when the DM like just railroads people into whatever plot they want, because that's not the point. You know, if you're playing a role-playing game, it's because you're playing it as a group. You're making something that's a little bit tangible together. And I think that that's what's beautiful about like this show, and also like tabletop role-playing games in general. It's let's get together and tell a story, and no matter what, at the end someone's going to be like, we should make this into a book, or we should have a podcast, because they need someone to know that the story that they made together is beautiful and perfect. And maybe that book or podcast will never come to fruition, but the story will always exist and be treasured by everyone who got to be there for it.
Yes, just like I will treasure Mabel the skeleton and Steinway the tween emo henchman.
You'll never forget him.
I'll never forget him. I'm imagining bonus content for in between be like, the misadventures of Steinway and Mabel. It's like, yes, let's hear the next installment of them. And you have brilliant voice actors that are being a perfect tween, and a xylophone, ham boning skeleton and stuff, sound effects.
I know some people who speak sign language. I know some people who have done sign language Foley.
Okay, that would be very cool. So, I'm not above giving away ideas to other people to profit off of. Certainly, that's what this whole hobby and this whole endeavor is all about. Is just trying to empower people to have fun, greater fun, with some goofy NPCs that we make. So yeah, as we're here in the final moments of the episode, I always like to leave it to the guests. So the stage, the microphone, the soapbox, the platform, to tell us, what projects you've got going on, where can we find you on social media, what are the Patreons, and then any passions or causes that we need to be made aware of. Great.
I would say that if you want to find my work, you can always find In Between at thegoblinshead.com. You can see some of my work for Bloody FM on the podcast The Dead, which is ironically a zombie podcast. Or Regarding Dracula, which is zombie free but full of vampires. So there's that. And yeah, let's see, projects I'm working on now, looking at another horror adaptation, trying my darndest to write season 6 of In Between. Pray for me, I don't know. If you want to find my work, thegoblinshead.com is a good place to start. There's a tab that's got current projects stuff. There's writing that I do constantly also on that website. That's extra stuff that the Patreon folks get to see early. So signing up for the Patreon is a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And as for causes and, things that I want people to be thinking about, I would love for folks to, next time they see a child or a teenager being annoying in public, just remember that it's their first time being alive, just like you, and they're figuring it out. And if they're not harming anyone, then just leave them alone. Let them do their thing. It's fine. Let the kid exist in public.
Let them be awkward and bear the repercussions of their actions.
They'll get there. They will get there. They'll learn. Just let them be. Try not to be a jerk to a kid today. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that, but sometimes I do have to say that.
Well, I think that's very good. As a good reminder to us all. Yeah. We all were once awkward teens trying to figure it out. Gosh. And, some of us are lucky enough to grow out of it, or some of us just embrace it and just become even more weird. Clearly I have. So,
same.
So, yeah. So, Miss Hannah Wright, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. I can't wait to have you back on making even more interesting NPCs.
Oh, thank you, Kurt.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Overcast, or YouTube, or feel free to save the RSS feed to use the app or player of your choice. Visit our website, sidekicksandsidequests.com, for links, write-ups of the NPCs, and to learn more about the show and the guests who have been on it. To stay up to date and interact via social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram/Threads, Twitter/X, and Reddit by searching for Side KQ Podcast. You can also find our small Discord community as well online. I would love to talk D&D and showcase your fan art, stories of how you used our NPCs, discussions, and commentary. And hey, if you'd like to hail the bard and send me a message, an email, you can do so by communicating with sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. To help this show be the resource it's meant to be, I ask that you leave a review on iTunes, 5 stars please, to help spread the word and share our podcast with your friends and family. Whether you're a veteran player or an aspiring dungeon master, there's something here for everyone, and I want to hear about it. As mentioned in the NPC creations section of the podcast, I do in fact have a Patreon for Sidekicks and Sidequests. If you love this podcast and what we're trying to do here, I would appreciate it if you would just go to the website, patreon.com/sidekicks and sidequests. No matter your lifestyle expenses, we have wonderful rewards at every level of Patreon membership tier. Modest, comfortable, wealthy, and aristocratic accommodations await, and we welcome all patrons to the Levitating Platter. Seriously, your financial support allows for this passion project to continue to invest in itself through the tools that will take our production to the next level, as well as provide more content for our patrons and the community at large. Please consider supporting me on Patreon if you can.
Sidekicks and Sidequests is unofficial fan content permitted under the fan content policy.
Meaning I'm not approved or endorsed by Wizards.
Portions of the materials used are property of Wizards of the Coast.
Copyright Wizards of the Coast,
LLC.
Thank you for your support, and I'll see you at the pub next time.
Bar to rock on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sidekicks and Sidequests.